First on our news at 7, why the Attorney General is cautioning local and international authorities to show restraint and commentary on the collapse of FTX, and what else you may have missed from the Attorney General's national address. An anonymous tip leads to the discovery of a man's body off Cowpen Road early this morning. Now police are issuing a safety warning this holiday season. Bail has been granted to the man charged with the October 31st murder of banker Patrice Sawyer. New details from inside the courtroom. And then in our news at 7:30, how the country is stepping up to celebrate 50 years of independence in 2023. Our news live at 7 starts now. Welcome to our news live at 7. Thanks for joining us. I'm Kindino Knowles. Labeling the FTX debacle as an obscuring of basic facts by guessing games and rumors, Attorney General Ryan Pinder for the first time laying out government's position on the ongoing saga while slamming critics. Berthany McDermott gets us started tonight.
The Attorney General is defending the government's response to the collapse of FTX while launching a scathing attack on those he says are spreading false information about the process. In a national address Sunday, Pinder said the Bahamas is a country of law, adding attempts to blame the government are false.
Any attempt to lay the entirety of this debacle at the feet of the Bahamas because FTX is headquartered here would be a gross oversimplification of reality, and it is deeply misguided to conclude that reluctance to communicate the details of an active investigation means that nothing is happening.
Earlier this month, the Securities Commission of the Bahamas froze FTX's assets and applied to the Supreme Court to put the company into liquidation. Pinder says government found some of the assertions on the FTX matter shocking.
We have been shocked at the ignorance of those who assert that FTX came to the Bahamas because they did not want to submit to regulatory scrutiny. In fact, the world is full of countries in which there is no legislative or regulatory authority over the crypto and digital asset business. But I must say the Bahamas is not one of these countries.
The AG insists faith in the Bahamas as a responsible jurisdiction will only be strengthened. He said both criminal and civil investigations into the affairs of FTX digital markets are ongoing. Pinder urged local and international authorities to be prudent and show restraint with their public commentary so as to not prejudice the proceedings. He called recent admissions from FTX's new CEO regrettable, saying they misrepresented actions taken by the Securities Commission.
It is possible that the prospect of multi-million-dollar legal and consultancy fees is driving both their legal strategy and their intemperate statements. In any case, we urge prudence and accuracy in all future filings in all matters.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Berthany McDermott.
Meanwhile, Opposition Member of Parliament for East Grand Bahama and Shadow Minister of Finance Kwesi Thompson says he's less than impressed by the AG's national address on the collapse of FTX. Thompson says the AG's comprehensive response came too late.
Despite what the Attorney General says, many in the international community are using the fall of FTX to attack the good reputation of the Bahamas as a well-regulated financial services jurisdiction. We are dismayed that it took this long for a comprehensive statement to be made. The PLP government's silence, particularly in the international press, has already caused irreparable damage.
Thompson says while the Free National Movement agrees the AG's comments should be responsible, not enough is being done to protect the country's reputation.
So where is the communication strategy? One statement is not enough. Have we engaged an international PR firm? Why hasn't the government met with the opposition and, more importantly, met with industry to manage the international message in a non-partisan way?
The murder count climbs again as a man in his mid-20s is dead tonight. A top cop now urging residents to be on alert during the holiday season.
Officer in charge of the Criminal Investigation Department, Chief Superintendent Michael Johnson, speaking with reporters on the scene this morning, saying the deadly shooting occurred around 7 a.m. Police were tipped off by an anonymous call that revealed the victim was lying on the southern side of Cowpen Road with gunshot wounds.
Well, we know that based on the condition of the body, it appears that he was there no more than but an hour prior to the police coming.
Johnson adds that it appears the shooting happened at another location and the body was discarded in the area. Chief Superintendent Johnson says it's becoming increasingly clear that there are some criminals who do not care about the life of others.
Well, we suspect that this is not the primary scene based on our evidence so far that we found on the scene, and so we are continuing this investigation.
And he's asking people to be vigilant as we approach the Christmas season.
Be aware of your surroundings, be aware of where you go, who you hang with, because that could cause some problems for you. If you know that persons are on bail for any serious matters, I ask you and I caution you not to be in the vicinity where these persons are, because it could cause some trouble for you.
That report there from our Atalia Hall. She's up at the bottom of the hour for our news at 7:30. 2 men are in hospital tonight after a shooting in the Miami Street area. Police say Spot Shutter technology alerted them to the shooting of the men, a 34-year-old and 31-year-old. Officers say they found the older man suffering from multiple gunshot injuries and was taken to hospital by EMS. Police say the other victim, a resident of Lincoln Boulevard, had already been taken to hospital in a private vehicle. Well, we've got more from the crime beat coming up in just a moment, but for now, meteorologist Greg Thompson is standing by in the Weather Center. He's got your first look at temperatures. Greg?
Yeah, thanks, Candino, and happy Monday evening, everybody. It is warm. It has been warm for the last couple of days, courtesy of a ridge of high pressure that's been sitting across us. But we are in the low 80s right now under mostly clear skies, and once again, the temperatures will fall off tonight nicely. The winds out of the north at 7 miles per hour, and your field slight temperature at 81 degrees. Around the islands tonight, it's 79 in Freeport, as well as in Great Harbor Key. We pick up 80 in Allenstown, Bimini. Over in Marsh Harbor, 78. Also in Nicholstown, 78 there. 81 in Governor's Harbor, and across in New Providence here, as I mentioned, we are at 80. In the Central Bahamas, 79 in Kemps Bay, Andros, 84 in Arthurstown, Cat Island. Georgetown, 82, 79 in Cobra Town, San Salvador. Deadman's Key, you guys are at 82 right now. Southeast, 81 degrees in Duncantown, Ragged Island, Colonel Hill, Cricket Island, 80, 82 in Delectable Bay, that's in Acklands, 81 in Abrams Bay. Our neighbors to the southeast, Turks and Caicos Islands, you are 79, and deep south, Inagua, rounding out our temperature profile at 80 degrees. Satellite view, we have a frontal boundary that's now making its way into the northwest Bahamas. Most of the cloud activity is still behind that front, mainly across central and south Florida. We don't think much in terms of any shower activity will be associated with this front. It's quickly falling apart and will continue to side to south, but behind that high pressure will be building in across the area. So we're looking at some rather breezy conditions across the extreme northwest Bahamas beginning tomorrow, but the remainder of the Bahamas will remain very nice and kind of warm for the next several days. That's your first check on weather. Stick with us to look at the tropics, and your extended forecast is still to come.
Still to come on our news, 'tis the season to stay on your guard as police are investigating 3 armed robberies, how you can stay safe. Smuggling of contraband into the Bahamas Department of Corrections, still a major issue. We'll tell you how many cell phones were discovered behind bars as the groundbreaking for a new prison wing is set for January. Plus, a scholarship carrying on the legacy of Ruby Ann Cooper Darling and women's suffrage. It's all coming up when our news returns. An ex-boyfriend charged with the October 31st murder of banker Patrice Sawyer was granted $30,000 bail today. Senior Justice Bernard Turner ignored objections from prosecutors who asked that Lyndon Vincent be held without bail, citing alleged evidence linking him to the fatal shooting. Sawyer was shot in the head soon after she went to take a phone call outside of her parents' Johnson Road home. Vincent sought bail on the grounds of medical issues and is to be electronically monitored while checking in at a police station 3 times a week. Meanwhile, police are investigating 3 Saturday night armed robberies, the first happening shortly before 8 p.m. in the Christie Avenue area of Stapleton Gardens. Police say a woman was making a delivery when she was approached by 3 men in a white Nissan Note. One of the men, armed with a handgun, robbed the woman of her silver Honda Fit, 3 cell phones, personal items, and an undetermined amount of money. 2 hours later, police say a 65-year-old Garden Hills man was helping a female friend when he was approached by 2 men in a dark-colored Jeep. Police say one of the men was armed and robbed the victim of his brown Nissan Cube, a cell phone, and an undetermined amount of cash. And about an hour after that, a home on Carmichael Road, the scene of the third robbery after police say a man and woman inside a black 2011 Camry on Antigua Street were allegedly approached by 2 armed men driving a white Paso. Police say the victims were robbed of the Camry and cell phones. Investigations are said to be ongoing. And a 32-year-old man of Murphytown is in police custody after he was found in possession of a quantity of suspected cocaine, marijuana, and a large amount of cash on Saturday night. Police and Defense Force officers executing a search warrant on a home in Marsh Harbor around 7:20 when they say they found the drugs and cash. Well, as police continue working to stem the tide of crime, National Security Minister Wayne Monroe says his ministry is hoping to break ground on a new high-medium security prison by the middle of January.
That is ambitious, but this is why you see the whole team here from the Ministry of National Security, as our function is to do what is necessary to seek to accomplish the goals that are set out.
Monroe also speaking about construction of a new virtual remand court he says will eliminate transferring inmates to and from court.
We will trust that the remand court can accommodate some simple trials, particularly in the Family Islands. We have a phenomena that people are transported to Grand Bahamas, say Abaco, Eleuthera, just to be told, we'll deal with you in another week, another month or 2. It's a wasted trip, it's wasted manpower, and it's wasted resources. The virtual court will accommodate that as well and realize cost savings, quite apart from the logistics of moving inmates around the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
Meanwhile, Acting Corrections Commissioner Dewan Kalair says contraband making its way into the prison remains a major concern.
The last report that I was given from the contraband, the search and contraband unit, they have found, this compound-wide, they have found close to over 400 cell phones and an untold amount of drugs. I don't have the actual weightage of the drugs, but they search every day.
The issue of inmates hiding contraband in cells has long been a vexing issue at the facility. Once construction begins on the new high-medium security prison, the National Security Minister says it will eliminate the ability of inmates to hide contraband in the prison.
It also permits you to have a better control on security. And so the fact that these cells will be steel, 2-ply steel, means that you can't dig and hide any contraband anywhere. All of the furniture is in that same fashion. You can't dig and hide contraband anywhere.
When our news comes back from the break, we turn our spotlight to stories making headlines across the world as residents in China continue to protest COVID restrictions. Plus, a look back on the success of the Miss Bahamas International Beauty Contest to promote the country, and how a scholarship is honoring the contributions of a woman's suffrage icon. The details coming up on the other side of the break. This is our news. Welcome back. We turn our attention now to stories making headlines across the world. Chinese authorities are seeking to end protests against COVID restrictions that spread to some of its biggest cities over the weekend. The extraordinary scenes of protests over China's zero COVID policy, as China reported Monday, a fifth straight daily record of new local COVID-19 cases that passed the 40,000 mark. The demonstrations are an unprecedented challenge to President Xi Jinping, with some calling on him to resign. 2 people were rescued early Monday, more than 6 hours after their plane crashed into live power lines, causing widespread outages in Montgomery County, Maryland. Fire Chief Scott Goldstein said the plane got stuck in the lines about 100 feet above the ground at around 5:40 on Sunday afternoon. Responders secured it to the tower just after midnight Monday, rescuing the pilot and passenger half an hour later. Utility contractors disconnected high-tension wires to make it safe for rescuers to stabilize the plane.
Saw all these fire engines going by and everything. I did see the police at Apple Ridge and Montgomery Village first when I was leaving, so I thought it's something big, so we just turned around, came over here. There was a guy who actually was right here nearby when it happened. He said he heard a big crash, big boom and everything, and so it's unfortunate, but I'm glad that they're still up in there. We can see the light in the cockpit of the cell phone from the pilot. We did hear that they called in to say they were okay.
A man was rescued from a subway track just seconds before an incoming train in New York City. Body cam footage from New York City Police Department shows the moment he was pulled from the tracks in Harlem. When officers arrived, a bystander was already trying to help him. 2 officers and a member of the public lifted the man onto the platform before hoisting themselves to safety. And police in Ecuador have arrested 7 gunmen who stormed a hospital in an attempt to kill a teen being treated. Gang members took nurses hostage and exchanged fire with police before they were detained. Officials say all hostages were freed and no one was injured. The 17-year-old target of the attack, known as Dirty Face, is thought to be a rival gang member who is in ICU recovering from bullet wounds. And there has been a surge in the number of Mexicans requesting asylum in Canada this year. Official stats show 8,000 Mexican nationals have sought refugee status in 2022 following the threat of violence back home. That's almost 5 times as many as last year and more than twice as many in 2019. In Canada, claimants must meet the United Nations definition of a convention refugee, meaning they are outside of their home countries and have a well-founded fear that they would be persecuted if they returned. Still to come in our news, today in history, find out interesting facts about the day that was November 28th and the trial and sentencing of history's infamous female pirates Mary Read and Anne Bonny. Plus, Greg is back with your extended weather forecast. And then in our news at 7:30, how corporate citizens are working to make Christmas extra special for Cat Island kids. It's all coming up when Our News returns. Welcome back to Our News. It's time now to turn our spotlight on events that shaped the day that was November 28th. Take a look. On this day in Bahamian history in 1720, female pirates Mary Read and Anne Bonny, who were members of Calico Jack Rackham's crew, were tried and condemned to death for the same crimes that resulted in the Calico Jack and crew's execution 10 days prior. Read and Bonny's executions were postponed after both informed the court they were pregnant. Bonny was eventually freed, though Read died in prison. Nearly 2 centuries later, on November 28, 1879, the first telephone between Government House and Colonial Secretary's office was established. Mr. E. Sargent erected the system, which was inaugurated on this day. The first official communication was "God Save the Queen." On November 28, in 1966, Miss Germany won the Miss Bahamas International Contest for a second time. 19-year-old Liz Frink of Dusseldorf won the title over her competitors from all over the world, Europe in particular. It was described as an ingenious idea which spurred interest in the Bahamas that regular sun, sand, and sea tourism advertising just couldn't buy. Miss Bahamas Sandra Jarrett competed in the contest, placing third overall. Then in world history, on this day in 1582, famed English poet and dramatist William Shakespeare married Anne Hathaway. In 1929, American businessman and musician Berry Gordy Jr., best known as founder of Motown record label and its subsidiaries, was born in Detroit, Michigan. Motown was the highest-earning African-American business for decades. In 2022, Gordy was inducted into the Black Music and Entertainment Walk of Fame. 1961 saw gridiron football player Ernie Davis of Syracuse University become the first African-American to win the prestigious Heisman Trophy. In 1989, Queen Latifah released her debut album, All Hail the Queen. Its success helped redefine the traditionally male genre of rap. Latifah received the BET Lifetime Achievement Award last year. And finally in 2012, Peter Jackson's The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey, the first in a series of movies based on J.R.R. Tolkien's book, had its world premiere in New Zealand. The series received mixed reviews, but was a financial success, becoming one of the highest-grossing film series of all time, with $2.9 billion in worldwide receipts. It was nominated for various awards and won several, although not as many as the creator's original trilogy, Lord of the Rings. Yesterday marked the 60th anniversary of the first election where Bahamian women had the right to vote, and last week saw a series of events marking the breakthrough in Bahamian women's rights. Now some of this history is being brought into the future. Marlena Leonard explains how in this report.
At a joint meeting of the House of Assembly and Senate last week, Education Minister Glenys Hanna Martin, daughter of Beryl Hanna, one of the leading figures in the right for universal suffrage, gave an impassioned speech about the effort that went into obtaining the right to vote.
And the fight continued for 2 more years, joining forces with sisters all over the world and with delegations of suffragettes traveling to the United Kingdom to state the cause, and a campaign of continued organized lobbying and pressure and protests.
Ruby Ann Cooper-Darling was the first Bahamian woman to register to vote in July of 1962, and a gala ball was held in her honor this weekend. There was also a $30,000 scholarship presented in Cooper-Darling's name. Star Apple founder Mildred Murphy tells us this scholarship is her way of ensuring Cooper-Darling's legacy and the stories of women like her are brought to future generations.
I felt compelled to name this award after Ruby. Ruby is an educator. She is one of the most selfless person that you will ever meet. She gave and expect nothing in return. She's one of those persons who actually hustle not for herself, but for others. The scholarship is a token to Ruby. It's an expression of gratitude from myself on behalf of my daughter and all the women across the Bahama land. And it's to help immortalize her name so she can live on forever.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Marlena Leonard.
All right, thanks a lot, Marlena. To watch that story again and for all of today's top stories, visit ournews.bs. It's going to do it for us in News at 7. Natalia Hall is up now with the latest headlines.
Yes, Ken, we've got a whole lot more to get to tonight, including a murder arraignment, some migrants rescued at sea, and the wonderful gift of giving. New at Our News at 7:30, plumbing issues and upgrades to the remand center at the Bahamas Department of Corrections. The National Security Minister leads a tour of the facility. And a teen and a 48-year-old man face charges in connection with a murder at Pondside Bar in Lewis Yard, Grand Bahama. Court details are straight ahead. And we'll tell you how you can take the first steps on the road to 50 in celebration of the 50th anniversary of independence. And later, Cat Island is the focus for gift giving in paradise. How Santa's elves are bringing glad tidings to the island this holiday season. Our News Live at 7:30 starts in a moment.